Welcome to my walkthrough of the newsletter creator that I made through the ServiceNow platform. In this, the newsletter creator creates two roles. The first is a newsletter user role, and I'm currently impersonating an individual who has that role. And then later on we'll show what you get with the newsletter admin role as well. But as a regular user who has the newsletter user role, you can simply go to the application filter and type in newsletter, and you'll see four different components to a newsletter. We'll click on the newsletter itself, and let's say that we're working on a team newsletter, so we'll click on this team newsletter that we've been working on. Now with a newsletter, you can give it a title and a subtitle. These are variables that can be inserted automatically into your newsletter. And then you have a concept of templates. So I can go here and we can select one of these templates. Let's select template number 1 for this example. And we can give it any recipients that we want to have receive this newsletter. We'll just say sam@mycompany.com. And we can give it a subject line of what we want to have appear on the subject line for email messages. This is kind of a preview of what's going to show up. We'll cover that later, but let's drill down over here. There's two sections to a newsletter. There's newsletter articles, so you can create different articles. You can order them so that they appear in a certain order on the newsletter. You can also create additional variables as well. These variables can insert data into your newsletter template. We'll cover that in just a minute. Let's look at some newsletter articles. Let's look at this first newsletter article. Modify one of the articles. The article does have an HTML body and a plain text body. The HTML body comes with this HTML editor so that you can go and highlight certain sections and do different things to them. And then you can also create a plain text version as well. And you can add little graphics here and everything else. Let's go ahead and save this update. So once you've written all of your newsletter articles, they will automatically populate in the newsletter when you click this generate button. Once it's generated, you'll see the new newsletter article. You can click this preview button to see how it might look in the browser. This is a more narrow template. It automatically inserted my newsletter and test edition. My newsletter is the newsletter title. This is the subtitle. And then here's that article that we changed. We added that registered character as well as centered a section of text. And then other articles as well that were attached to this newsletter get auto-generated. And then also, as you can see here, we had a section for useful links and that users can click on. So let's exit out of that. So here are the title, the newsletter title, the newsletter subtitle. And let's look at this template itself. So we'll jump over to the template. Templates can be created by newsletter users as well. Templates can use this WYSIWYG editor. You can also click on the HTML button and actually use HTML to make more complicated newsletter templates with styles, etc. This basic one was created with certain styles and everything. But notice if I wanted to do variables, the variables look very similar to variables that you might find in our SOAP messages and REST message records in the system. They're delineated by a $sign and a curly brace, then a variable name, and then an end curly brace. And so you define these variables, and some of these variables there's a concept, two types of variables inside of the newsletter creator. The first set are set variables, Those include newsletter title, NL title, and NL subtitle. Those are pulled from the newsletter record. There's a title field and a subtitle field. A few other special variables that should exist for every newsletter is this article list variable. It's kind of like it delineates where does your list of articles need to go inside of this template. And it's kind of a begin and end variable. Here's the begin variable for it. The end variable is the same but with a / before the article list. That just says all the articles that we have defined for this newsletter are going to go between these two variables here. And then you kind of set up a style with an article title and an article body. The article title is the title field on the article record itself. The article body is the body field, the actual content of that article. So you place where this will go. And if you have multiple articles, it's just going to put one article title and body after another within this article list definition. So those 5 variables are the special variables: the NL title, the NL subtitle, the article list, article title, article body. Now beyond that, you can create your own variables as well, custom variables specific to your newsletter or to your template. So in this template, we're going to have a newsletter name. It might be my company newsletter or my team newsletter. Whatever they set as that variable will display here. And then secondly, there's a variable for links. And so maybe those links will change with every newsletter, and you want to define new links every time without modifying your newsletter template. So you just specify those links in a variable. So let's jump back to a newsletter that shows those links. So let's go to my team newsletter, and let's go look at the variables. I've already defined the variables here, but here's the newsletter name variable. There's 2 types of custom variables that you can set. The first type is a text variable. The text variable just means strictly replace whatever I put in this value into that variable name. So it's going to search the newsletter for this variable name, and it'll replace that variable name with this value here. In this case, it's going to say my team newsletter. All right. The second type of newsletter variable, let's drill down to it, is a scripted custom variable here. Let's jump into links. With links, I set this as a script. When you use a scripted variable, you can use JavaScript. Let's expand this field here a little bit. You can use JavaScript. This JavaScript runs server side. And what it does is there's a special variable called answer. Whatever value answer has at the end of the script is what will be set in the variable in your template. So you can do all sorts of JavaScript. In this JavaScript example, we're doing a JavaScript array of a URL and a title, URL and title. And then what we're doing is we're iterating through that array, and we're building out some bullets with a link in HTML. And that's going to then be set in the links variable inside of our newsletter template. So if we were to jump back over to our newsletter, we can kind of show what that looks like. Let's bring this down here, and let's make this bigger. So once we generated that newsletter, as you can see here, here's the value of that custom variable, the newsletter variable, the newsletter title. Here is the built-in variable that pulls from the title field. This test edition comes from the subtitle field. And then here's the article variables filling into that article list. And then we go to the end, and there's that useful links section. And as you can see, that links variable has been replaced with the actual links from our script. And also the plain text version is auto-generated, similar to the HTML version when you hit generate. Okay. Now, let's say that everything is the way that we want it to be, and so we're ready to send out this newsletter. Again, we put any recipients. If we have other recipients, maybe it's Trish at mycompany.com. You can add as many recipients as you need, and then once you're ready to send this, let's actually save this for good measure. And let's scroll down. Once you're ready to send this, just go to this link that says publish to recipients. So we'll click on that, and you're going to get a warning that publishing the newsletter will send it via email to all the recipients listed there. So we'll go ahead and click continue. We do want this to be sent out as an email, and then you get a message saying that the newsletter was published and the emails were scheduled to be sent. So we would just wait for that email to be received. Now when we get our email, here's the email message that came out. Here's the subject line as we set it, and here's the email that we got from the system itself. We can click on these links and be brought into and be shown the link that was clicked. So that's how you generate these email messages and send them out. Now let's show what the admin role. So if you give the user the newsletter admin, newsletter creator admin role, they'll see a few different things. They'll be able to do whatever the newsletter user role was able to do, but let's jump over to David Liu, who has the newsletter creator admin role. And if he goes to the newsletter application, you'll see that there's more than just these 4 sections. David can also configure any settings to do with the newsletter. In this case, it's just changing the verbosity level of the logs that are printed out. If something's going wrong, you may want to debug and see what the problem is. Also, David has access to the main library that houses the functions set in for the newsletter, including the variable handling, the articles, stuff like that. Also, any UI actions that are used for the newsletter, he has access to modify and do what he sees fit for that. And also the output log. You'll be able to see what the output logs are that were created during the actions that were taken. All right, let's jump back to the newsletter that we already sent. Let's say that we really like this template, and now it's going to be the next month. We want to prepare for the next month when we send out our next newsletter. Since we like everything here the way it's set up, we do like the template, we like our variables as well. We don't want to have to create them anew every time we do a new newsletter, and we don't want to, maybe we want to keep a historical record of this current newsletter. So there's a copy to new button that you can use, and if you do this, it's going to duplicate this entire newsletter, the articles, as well as the variables. So I'm going to click that now, and as you can see here, it's created a new newsletter that has -copy appended to it. So let's go into that, and so now we can say, my team newsletter 2, and maybe this is going to be the March edition. And then we can come back down here and say, okay, my first article, we can either delete these articles. These are copies, so if we just want to change these articles, maybe we like the format or something else, You can just change these. They don't affect the prior newsletter records at all, because these are just duplicates or cloned articles. So you can either just modify and create new articles this way. You can delete them and create totally new articles for your newsletter as well. You can also switch the template. Let's say we want to switch over to template number 2, and let's generate our March edition template number 2. Here's the second template. It's a much simpler template. This template was made, let's drive over to that template. This template was made simply by using the GUI. No hard-coded HTML or styles were used here, but it still generates, let's leave the page. It still generates, a good-looking newsletter that fits in the size of a typical email. So these can be very easy to create, easy to copy, easy to keep and move to the next edition without having to set things up all over again. You can, just a reminder that you can set these up to be as complicated as you want. Maybe you have an internal newsletter that's a little bit more complicated, that has a table of contents, that adds recent blog articles, that has a 2-column format. All of this is doable with the templating features. And if you know a little HTML or CSS, you can really design some beautiful looking newsletters. If you don't know basic web programming, you can just use that editor and still come up with some great email formatted newsletter templates that will wow your audiences. So thank you for watching this. This is being shared as an update set. You can download it and install it to your instance, play around with it. And this is a initial version. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to comment, and I'll try to implement them as quickly as I have time to do so. Thank you for watching.